Jack Murdoch wanted his son to live a life without fear. He urged the boy not to follow in his father's footsteps, to be brave enough to make something of himself. When Matt was a teenager, he was injured saving a man's life. As a result, the young man was exposed to radiation, rendering the boy blind. But something amazing happened as well. Matt's other senses grew in strength. He could hear people's heartbeat, recognize them by scent alone, and developed a radar-like sense of his surroundings. Matt became a successful lawyer, but Jack never got to see him grow up. He never saw his son become the man without fear. Sometimes, in his dreams, he can see. Just sometimes. Sometimes, something wakes him up. One time, it was Foggy's incessant snacking. Matt woke up unhappy that his friend is eating junk food once again, and decides it's time to go out. After all, today's the day, and Foggy, in spite of his protests, is coming with him. They have somewhere to be. Out in the streets, Matt comments that New York is the greatest city on earth. When he was a kid, it was all a bit overwhelming. Now, he can filter out all the sounds and smells, and has started to take time to just savor it all. He stops by a fruit stand, saying that this food is so much better than the crap Foggy was eating. He focuses on a tray of strawberries in front of him. He tells Foggy that with his senses, each and every one of them smells just a little different. Foggy is disturbed at this change in his old friend. He asks if the smiling, happy Murdoch is going to be around all the time now, because Nelson really didn't expect this after everything that's happened. Matt ignores this, and they continue on. The two come across a musician. Murdoch asks if he can try the performer's violin, and, when given enough money, the musician happily agrees. Foggy is surprised at this, not knowing that his friend could play, but when Murdoch begins, it becomes clear he doesn't. However, listening intently, Matt rapidly improves, and by the end of his performance, the surrounding crowd is impressed. Foggy says that's a new trick, but it's time to stop putting things off. Today's the day. Today's the day Matt's father died. Sometimes, in his dreams, he can see. He sees that he wants to live. He's been acting different lately, but there's a reason for it. The last few years have been miserable. Every time he thinks he hits rock bottom, God somehow finds a bigger shovel. The pain and loss have been unbearable. So he's decided to become a new man. You can say it's denial. You can say he's not dealing with his past or being a jerk, but he just doesn't care. This is how Matt chooses to cope. He asks if Foggy is okay with this, and at first the man doesn't have an answer. As his friend leaves, Nelson quietly comments to himself that he just isn't sure. On the northern tip of Manhattan is a place called the Cloisters. The main complex is a detailed rendition of 5 medieval European abbeys. Every brick is authentic, and every plant in its surrounding gardens is carefully landscaped. Matt bets it's a beautiful sight, but he wouldn't know. Let's talk about what he perceives. A courtyard, filled with tuxedos, gowns, and creaky wooden chairs. He can hear happy laughter, and in the breeze, he tastes the salt of tears. He can read the wedding announcements people are carrying. This is a union between 2 of New York's bigger crime families. Rumor has it that a hit's been planned today. Matt hears an almost imperceptible shift in the echo of the organ music, and Daredevil quickly realizes it's not a hit that's been planned, but rather a kidnapping. Daredevil leaps into action, saving a young girl from a villain known as the Spot. In the confusion, the mobsters assume Daredevil is the kidnapper, while the hero does his best to evade the villain. The Spot is able to teleport between portals he is able to create anywhere, making it difficult to run away from him. Daredevil explains to the crowd that he's trying to save her, not kidnap her, and that the would-be captor must be working with someone on the inside. Using his radar senses, Matt is able to point out the inside man to buy himself some time. As everyone in the wedding turns to this traitor, he tries to deny things, but quickly admits the truth. Before he can explain himself, the Spot emerges from within this man, and, to keep the monster silent, breaks his neck. Thinking fast, Daredevil passes off the girl onto the groom, and before he leaves, he shares a kiss with the bride, commenting that her perfume is driving him wild. Matt grabs the Spot, but is unable to pull the villain through his portal. He could let go and run, but then he wouldn't be Daredevil. Later, at a hot dog stand, the vendor is reading about this story in a newspaper. He asks Matt Murdoch what happened next. Murdoch denies that he's the Daredevil, but the vendor won't hear of it. He wants to know how Daredevil fought the spot, and what it was like to kiss the bride at a mob wedding. Matt still insists he's got the wrong man, annoying the vendor. You see, a while back, Matt was outed as Daredevil by the tabloids. Murdoch worked hard to erase the notion in the public image, but the idea still lingers. Things are okay now, but for a time, it was hell. Literally, he was even possessed by a demon for a while. Matt had to leave the city, his legal practice, and his friends. But now it's back. It's time to put all that baggage behind him. He meets up with Foggy at the courthouse, where many members of the press are there to ask him about Daredevil. He brushes this off, saying he hoped they were past this by now, and enters court. Today he has a rather simple case. His client, a man named Mr. Jabrani, has a rather open and shut lawsuit concerning an act of police brutality. The evidence is clear, and the win should be easy. Before Matt can begin with his opening statement, the defense has an objection. For the next half hour, the lawyer rants about how Matt Murdoch is the Daredevil, claiming the plaintiff has a hostile relationship with the police. The man is relentless, and soon enough, the judge grants a continuance, encouraging Matt's client to find a new lawyer. Matt can tell by his client's pulse and sweat that Jabrani is no longer confident about things, and Murdoch knows this means it is over. He agrees to help the man find a new lawyer, and even offers to pay their fees. Murdoch knows he's rusty, so he goes to the roof of Nelson and Murdoch's office building to reflect on things. Next time, he'll be ready. Next time, he'll dodge the press. Next time, he won't embarrass Foggy. Matt's moment of solitude is interrupted by a visitor. He notices that she is deliberately scuffing her feet as she approaches him, to warn the blind man that he has company. Murdoch appreciates the gesture. She introduces herself as Kirsten McDuffie, the new assistant DA. She comments that she believes he is Daredevil and warns the man that the treatment he got today is only the tip of the iceberg. Every lawyer in this city will use the idea of Daredevil against him. Kirsten in the DA office can't officially bar Matt from entering a courtroom, but she asks him to consider what this will do to his clients, and how this will be yet another waste of time in the already overburdened judicial system. She refuses to accept Matt's repeated denial of being Daredevil, even testing the man by throwing a pen at him. When he lets himself get hit by it, she sees right through him and is not impressed. She has one final observation. Nobody will take Jabrani's place. Kirsten says that if she were Daredevil, she'd certainly find that fact very interesting. So Matt calls Foggy and tells him to put off referring Jabrani's case, for now. There's more going on here, and it's time to do some digging. Initially, Matt doesn't find much on Jabrani himself. The man doesn't seem to be hiding anything, and seems like an ordinary Muslim shop owner. Matt then senses something, and it's moving right towards him. A grenade of anti-radar chaff explodes around him, and Matt realizes that whoever this is knows him well. In an instant, Matt is lost. His surroundings become a mess. He can tell something is coming for him, but what? He doesn't know. Matt manages to dodge Captain America's shield, and instantly recognizes it. He strikes out, clipping Cap's head before he manages to take the man's shield. Steve Rogers announces that Matt is under arrest. Daredevil objects to this, leaping away from the scene and riding Cap's shield into an abandoned room. Wielding Daredevil's own weapons, Cap follows in close pursuit. Matt can guess what this is about. The demon that possessed him did some very dark things in Matt's body. Things he would not like to openly revisit. However, there's more going on here. Matt remembers that Bucky was recently charged with treason, and doubtless this is causing frustration in his ally. Cap denies this has anything to do with Bucky, but Matt knows better. He insists that he was a puppet of the Hand, and asks Steve to remember what the page 2 headline was when Cap joined the Avengers all those years ago. Steve remembers it well. Masked Daredevil topples Fixer's syndicate. This calms Rogers down. They've known each other for a long time, and Matt argues there's an innocent man out there who is counting on Murdoch's help. Reluctantly, Steve agrees to leave things be, for now. But this doesn't settle the matter. Murdoch promises he will be in touch, before remarking how beautifully Cap's shield is balanced. It was like touching a Stradivarius. He thanks the hero for making his day. Over at Nelson and Murdoch, Foggy gets a visit from Kirsten McDuffie. She has information relevant to the Jabrani case. Now, while the DA's office wouldn't let her just hand the knowledge over, if he were to happen to read this info over his shoulder, well, everyone knows how nosy Foggy can be. Nelson is startled at the new evidence he sees, and promises to tell Matt as soon as possible. Before McDuffie leaves, she has one more matter to settle. Foggy's lucky tie. He left it in her apartment last night. Elsewhere, Daredevil tracked down a lawyer named Gene Lauren. Gene is an excellent litigator. He has never turned anybody down wrong by the system. He never backs down and never gives up. Matt likes the man, so he takes a soft approach. Hiding under a bridge, he covertly talks to the man and his partner. Asking why Gene didn't take the Jabrani case, Murdoch quickly and correctly susses out that it is because the lawyer was threatened. After Matt promises to keep the couple secret and reassures them that this won't come back to hurt them, Gene explains how he got a call warning him that if he took the Jabrani case, then his partner would be in danger. The caller's voice was that of an older man, but it was heavy with echoes, as if there was some sort of bad connection. But the voice didn't sound artificial or filtered. Matt confirms that other lawyers were given similar threats before he has a thought, and asks what Jabrani was planning to do with the money if he wins the court case. Daredevil learns that Jabrani wants to buy the building where his electronics store is run out of. He goes to inspect the facility. The shop lies abandoned without electricity, yet he can hear something moving below it. Metal on metal, and something more. Something faint. A buzzing. He goes downstairs and is shocked by what he sees. Whatever these beings are, they are not human. His radar sense tells him they have physical shape, but his ears say they're just noise. The beings surround Matt and he begins to falter. Whatever these things are, they are playing havoc with Matt's enhanced senses. He cannot suppress them, and pretty soon, he falls unconscious. He wakes up, alive, but contained, strapped to a strange device, and surrounded by circuitry. They're doing something to him. He's paralyzed. There's one way to reach for his belly club, but it's going to hurt. He gets ready to act when he hears something between the static of his captors, a human heartbeat. However, there's something wrong with it. It's irregular. It has no rhythm. The other creatures don't react to it, so they were expecting this person. But he's different from the rest. Whole. Fully human. Like them, he is a fusion of sound waves, but different. Deeper. More solid, somehow. Matt asks who he is, and the villain replies that they have met before. He is Claw, master of sound. And now Daredevil knows this is bad. Claw is a villain made up of pure sound who faced up against the Black Panther in Fantastic Four. Last Daredevil heard, he was broadcasted to outer space and hasn't been heard from since. But one thing bothers Matt more than anything else. What would Claw possibly want with a Middle Eastern shop owner? Over in Jabrani's apartment, Nelson confronts the shopkeeper with the evidence he got from Kirsten. Recently, Jabrani had a psychiatric evaluation concerning voices he had been hearing, telling him to drop the case. This makes him an unreliable witness. They can't help him, and Foggy can't, in good conscience, recommend him to a lawyer knowing this. He apologizes to the man, saying there's nothing they can do to help him. Jabrani sits in sorrowful silence. Daredevil changes his tactics now that he knows what he's facing. He baits Claw into revealing what is going on. The being explains he is one of Claw's duplicates, a minion created by the original Claw long ago during the battle with the Avengers. The clone survived the battle while the original was captured. Though much weaker, merely an echo of the true villain, it survived, and thanks to the help of others, it began to build an antenna to locate the original Claw and restore him back on Earth. With great effort, it created more clones, mindless beings, to complete his work. They hid here, only threatened by the possibility of Jabrani buying his building back. Unable to intervene physically without risking exposure, he instead uses sonar abilities to threaten lawyers and Jabrani himself. During this talk, Daredevil begins working his hand out of the restraint when the beings hear his glove tear. He realizes they are too sensitive to sound for him to break free unnoticed, so while they are busy reattaching his hand into the restraint, he slips his other hand free and grabs his billy club. Matt asks about what his role is in all of this, and Claw explains that he is to act as a template, a vessel for the true Claw to form around. The creatures attach the antenna to Daredevil's face and activate the device. Matt knows it's now or never. He might not survive this. His senses certainly aren't likely to come out of here intact. But he is Daredevil. This is what he does. Matt distracts the beings by shouting and shatters the device around him. The feeling is unbearable. His radar sense becomes jumbled. He can't hear, smell, or taste the world around him. All he can do is run. He lost the grappling line, so he must flee on foot, but it is difficult. His brain feels like it's going to explode. Matt tries to destroy the antenna, when Claw launches an attack on him. Matt drops it and is forced to fumble around for it blindly, when the bus nearly hits him. Realizing he must be on the road, he prays he wound up on the sidewalk. Blind. Totally blind. And somewhere out there is Claw. The villain appears behind Daredevil and strikes out, but Matt can tell Claw is expending energy, while Murdoch is starting to recover. Claw is getting weaker. He's getting stronger. Daredevil is able to grab hold of the antenna, and Claude pleads for him to stop. As Claw begins to dissipate, Matt demands to know where the others were that helped him. The villain answers with a name, but it is lost to Murdoch amidst the dying static and his badly damaged hearing. Left without any further leads, he is comforted by the fact that at least his client can safely get his day in court. Which makes the revelation that Foggy dropped Giovanni all the more infuriating when Matt finds out the next day. Foggy is uncomfortable with Matt's reaction, as he seems to be shouting at him, but it is just a symptom of the hearing loss. Matt isn't angry so much as upset. The case is an easy one, and wouldn't be difficult to win at this point. A first-year law student could do this, and suddenly, they have an idea. The two visit Giovanni, who is also uncomfortable at Matt shouting at him. Regardless, they tell him their plan. If nobody will be his lawyer, Giovanni can represent himself. The two agree to coach him through his defense. He's nervous at the idea, but Matt reassures him. There's nothing to fear. By nature, Matt is not a very good teacher, but he is a good lawyer. Giovanni does his best. He stammers, he fumbles, and Matt sits through half the case cringing, but the man does well, and in the end, justice prevails. It's a good feeling, and the two men celebrate their victory at a bar. With his settlement, Giovanni was happy to pay Nelson and Murdoch their lawyers' fees. It's enough for them to take on staff. Feeling great, Matt approaches two women, introducing himself and Foggy. Recognizing Matt's name, the young ladies ask if he is Daredevil. Murdoch says he isn't, but he is a big-time lawyer. Much to Foggy's shock, Matt says they have 6 clients lined up already. Hello and welcome to Comic Island. My name is Arden, and this is the complete story of Mark Waid's Daredevil, Part 1. So this was a long-standing request from a fan that I'm happy to have finally gotten around to. Mark Waid's take on Daredevil was great, and though I sampled a few of his stories here and there, these opening comics really impressed me. They firmly set up the new volume of Daredevil and the direction the series takes. And honestly, this might just be my favorite one with the hero yet. Oh, I've always been a fan of the off-sided Miller and Bendis takes on Daredevil, and I always will be. But man, this series is something else. Oh, where to begin? I like how Waid expertly touts so many aspects of Murdoch's powers and abilities. From little things like how Matt experiences the world, to big things like the unique way Daredevil interacts with Claw. The whole business with fighting a villain entirely composed of energy and sound was particularly clever when paired against Daredevil in my eyes. Then there's the characters, all well-rounded and nicely written. I like Kirsten and her relationship with Nelson and Murdoch, but it is Matt himself that really stands out. He's still the same man with the same history, but you can tell Waid is taking a new direction with this character, and his tone and outlook in life are decidedly different and distinct. This reflects the story as a whole. While it takes the material, history, and characters quite seriously, there's a rather distinct change in the tone, focus, and colors of this comic. It's rather uncanny at first, and though there will always be a place for dark Daredevil stories, there's really nothing quite like this in recent Daredevil history. I really like the change in this comic's direction though. It feels refreshing and fun. This is actually the sort of approach I think more superhero comics should be going for, and too few do. Yes, sometimes a dark, dramatic story can have a lot of weight and impact, but it has to be done very carefully and with a lot of detail-oriented work. All too often, stories like that wind up feeling flat and boring when they don't have that care behind them. Sometimes a little levity goes a long way. And at no point does this comic ever stray too far into just making a joke of itself. Like I said, it takes itself pretty seriously, but does have a sense of humor. Daredevil strikes that balance and strikes it well. The point of this comic is to entertain more than it is to have some big, profound message, and Daredevil is so entertaining because of this. The trend will continue throughout Waid's run on Daredevil, and I do plan to do some more of these. It's too fun to pass up, and yes, I recommend you get a hold of as many of Waid's Daredevil comics as you can. These were just the first few issues of Daredevil's 3rd volume, and Waid continues his work through its entire run as well as Volume 4. all of which include comics that are just amazing, and that's something I'd really considered essential to any Daredevil collection at this point. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next look at Daredevil at some point in the future, and in the meantime, don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep reading comics.